Welcome to the third episode of the Rain Race Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about IndyCar's recent tests with the aeroscreen, and we're also going to be discussing 2018 IndyCar entries, and we're going to round it all off with a recap of this year's WEC press conference. I'm Chris Aurelio. This is Rain Race. Let's go. I'm joined here alongside my partner in crime, Kyle Cuthbertson, as always.
What's up?
That's it. Has that been your common intro for every episode so far? You're just like,
it's been a common intro. It's gonna become a saying. It's gonna become my catchphrase for my t-shirts.
Yeah, I was gonna say put it on t-shirts. It just says Kyle Cuthbertson
/RayHallFanatic15.
Did you say sweatshirts.com?
I said Spreadshirt.
Oh, Spreadshirt. We're not sponsored, by the way. I think we have to disclose that. Anyway, 2018 IndyCar. Because you're my IndyCar insider, I kind of need you here for this one. Obviously, the first test with the aeroscreen was conducted last week at Phoenix International. Oh, I'm sorry, ISM Raceway. I almost got that wrong. But Scott Dixon was the driver out testing the car. Actually, some decent feedback from him. I know a lot of people with Vettel and F1 testing a similar concept. Vettel said it made him dizzy, so all eyes
for one lap.
Yeah, that's worth noting. But
you went out for one lap.
People were
that's testing.
People were immediately wondering if Dixon would experience the same thing, but really he didn't have too much negativity to say about it. He did say there were cooling issues, but obviously they have to do some more R&D with it and implement some cooling sources. But overall, I think that was a pretty strong test for the aeroscreen.
Yeah, I think it really was a strong, first test for it. Obviously, so, the cooling issues, they were talking about a NACA duct being inducted soon, but really this was the first prototype. They said the entire, reason for this first prototype was, there was going to be a second. They knew that from the start. So I think this whole testing process, it's going to, end up being a good thing for them. And hopefully the more this windscreen, I guess you're calling it, windscreen, aeroscreen, whatever they're calling it. I think the more testing they do, the better it'll get and the more improved it'll be. Because like I said, Vettel went out with their windscreen for one lap. And the way they had that aeroscreen, mold shaped, you could kind of tell it would distort an image. Like it was really long. It's not as tall as the windscreen. If you want an F1 example of what this windscreen that PPG has come up with, the OptiCore, if you want a better example, look at the one that Red Bull did. The one that Red Bull did, it was, more straight up, because the one Vettel did, that looked more, jet fighter canopy like look, So, yeah, you want a good F1 example, look at the Red Bull aeroscreen, which there was nothing wrong with the Red Bull aeroscreen. So, yeah, it definitely looks a lot better than the HALO, which, if I say if you know what it is, but if I say it, it'll cause controversy right away. And, yeah.
Well stated.
It's for me.
In terms of it being implemented this season, certainly won't be implemented by St. Pete. I can almost 99.9% guarantee that. IndyCar hasn't really said anything, though, have they? Where they said, we plan on having it on the cars for Indianapolis, or...
Yes, I think they've been saying, the initial plan when they first, talked about it, they said maybe like end of 2018, but now I think they're looking at like it's least likely to not be this season, but next season. So I think they want to do as much testing as they can, and I think they also know that if they I don't think they should put it in, midway, because that'd be kind of weird. I don't know why that'd be weird, but I don't know. But I feel like if they put it in midway, that'd be kind of weird. Maybe like some practice sessions to test it before the races, like on Fridays, But I don't think it'll be in this season, and I think that's what they've said is that, if it does come in this season, it'll be the end of the season, and if not, probably 2019.
And obviously a couple of issues that people have been bringing up. As much as people hate the halo, they're still somewhat critical on the aeroscreen. People have been saying water, first of all, rain, which wouldn't be a concern at oval races, but if they plan on having it on the car for the entire season, they do have races in the rain at least once or twice during an IndyCar season. And if not a race, then it's in a practice or qualifying session. But Yeah, I mean that's going to be a little bit of an issue if you can coat it with a certain sort of what's the
Like a
oleophobic?
Rain-X.
Or yeah, Rain-X oleophobic coating, where it sort of whisks the water away. Then that'd be cool. Obviously, you'd have to test that in its own, probably some sprinkler testers. I don't even know, but um, I mean, you want to make sure the driver's safe among all things first before you put it on a car that's going 200 miles an hour in a race. And then also dirt, because dirt isn't, it doesn't behave the same way as water, obviously. So if you got, um, tire marbles thrown up onto it, normally you just have a tear off on your the helmet, but it's not like an LMP car where they can get a windscreen wiper, and they also can't
Yeah.
just take a tear off their helmet. So have to be something I think that a pit crew member would take off during a pit stop, which I
Kind of like
mean,
how NASCAR does it, yeah.
yeah, I mean, that'd be a little bit tricky in a way because if you do get a lot of buildup very quickly, it could change the strategy of the race. Because if you can't see, that's going to
Yeah,
be,
because we've seen like out of the Indy 500, the cars at the end of the race, they're almost completely black with how much rubber buildup comes up onto the car. So I think that'd probably be the worst is the rubber buildup and those. But I mean, and the I mean, I think a tear off it would work. I think it'd be fine.
yeah,
It's
that's,
obviously takes is going to have to take testing, but I still think rain is probably the biggest, like the most high up issue. I think that's probably the highest up there in terms of visibility.
yeah. Um,
In terms of safety, we haven't seen any video of this new material that PPG has come up with because they said it was different than the materials F1 was testing because F1 came out with their video of how they tested the Halo versus the aeroscreen, and the aeroscreen, obviously it's not going to hold up as good as the Halo because the way it's shaped and the way it's built on. Because the Halo has more strength on the top because it's connected by the sides, and whereas the windscreen is it's just only connected on the bottom basically. So the top of the actual screen, the OptiCore, is going to be not as strong as say the Halo, but it'll do its job. And plus, if this new material is as strong as they're saying it is, it should work out fine for anything to go at it. Because they said the Halo is like way stronger than it actually needs to be. Just because of being completely safe. But I just remembered I just said the word Halo. We've created controversy. I was trying to
what
avoid
is
that in
this
the beginning of
like
the video. I
Ohio
was kind
State
of going
fans to
against my word.
Michigan? Like you won't use the letter
Yeah,
M.
yeah. I at the beginning of the podcast, I did want to say the H word, but damn it. Anyways, obviously the Halo is going to be stronger, and we need to see this new material in action before we say anything about how strong it is, really. But it is going to be interesting once they release, how strong it actually is. One more, Opticore. I looked this up on PPG's site, and Racer had it in their article. That it's basically like an airplane window, like the stuff that an airplane window is made of. It's like that, but I believe stronger. But PPG actually makes that glass for the airplane windows and stuff like that, which they call Opticore. So that's apparently what it is. That's the material.
Interesting stuff. Anyway, moving on to the second of two IndyCar topics today, because has it been 2 weeks or is it no? Yeah, it's been 2 weeks since we've released a podcast. No, is it three? I can't even keep track. I think it was two. Two
I think
weeks.
it's two.
Yeah, 2 weeks since we've released a podcast, and in that amount of time, you'd say, oh, it's IndyCar's off season, so there's probably not a lot of news going around in terms of entries or anything, especially for a race in May.
Oh, but there is.
But you're wrong because
We've had some we've had some interesting IndyCar entry news lately, and we haven't even gotten to that part. So Chris, I think
yes,
there is some good
yes.
news going on with entries for the 500, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in episode one, we discussed Danica Patrick and the Indy 500 and talking about her possibilities at a ride. I don't think that in that discussion SPM came up. I don't, not SPM, Ed Carpenter, duh. I was like,
I
wait a
did
minute, SPM,
though,
no. Did it?
because that news back then was she was either going to go to Reinbold or Carpenter, But I did say that I would thought that Reinbold was the definite place, but I was wrong, Sam.
Yeah. But anyway, confirmed for Ed Carpenter Racing in the Indianapolis 500. No confirmation on a number exactly right now, but that should be announced in the coming weeks/months. We'll see. Obviously, still sponsored by GoDaddy, just like her Daytona 500 effort. Which, by the way, this is being filmed a couple hours after the Daytona 500. So, yeah, if you haven't watched it yet,
Let's
spoiler
not
alert,
talk about that.
doesn't go that well for her. Just, I didn't even watch the race, but that's besides the point. Anyway.
Yeah, I did. Wah, wah, wah.
Anyway, so yeah, Danica Patrick's probably the biggest entry for a lot of people, the most exciting news for this race. But
Including
there
me.
are a lot of other people who are coming into this race, some first timers as well. So, Kyle, if you'd like to start us off here, because you are the resident IndyCar expert, just go down a couple names here on who we might see or who we are confirmed to see in a car or bringing as a team to the 500 this year.
Ooh. So, Danica Patrick was, of course, confirmed Ed Carpenter, and we're all kind of speculating that she's going to be the number 16 because Schmidt Peterson is looking to enter their own car, and Sam Schmidt said that that deal is about 90% done, which, I mean, I guess we can kind of call that like half confirmed. Um, because remember, Schmidt, he has 3 entries right now, but one is a Michael Shank add-on, and that's Shank's own, tub and chassis and stuff. So that is like mostly Shank. So, and before the DDA, Camels stuff went on, which is another thing that don't talk about. But before that went on, Schmidt Peterson, they were going to do their own 3-car effort. So that's still going to be a thing apparently with a number 7 car, which is why we think Danica is going to be the 16. Because apparently Schmidt Peterson, even though he moved Robert Wickens to the 6, he instead of 77, he wants to use the 7, so he has 5, 6, and 7. So there's that. But some drivers that might drive the number 7. Schmidt Peterson is actually probably the most looked at team in looking at on who's linked to the ride. RC Enerson, Juan Piedrahita, those these are the few guys that are probably less likely. RC Enerson, Juan Piedrahita, who's another guy? There was like some others that were. Let me scroll up here in my little notes. Oh yeah, Jay Howard was the biggest name to drive that car. Linked that are also these guys are least likely. Mikhail Loshner, Catherine Ledge. Mikhail freaking
I want to
Aloshin
pause you quickly.
back
I want to
linked to
pause you
Schmidt
because
Peterson.
this is a point where I remind you, you just said Catherine Ledge, and I just want to correct you.
Is it leg?
Well, I mean, that's what I've always called her. That's what I've always
Is
heard
it
everyone
leg?
else call her.
Well, then we're gonna say leg because we feel like it. Anyways,
That's what I'd hope from the beginning. But anyway, continue on, please.
I think Jay Howard is the guy that is like half confirmed to be in that car. But there are a lot of names surrounding it. James Davison said in December that he expected to be on the entry list, but wouldn't say a team. So he's also linked to SPM. So Sebastian Saavedra, if he can get Gary Peterson and AFS to hook him up, and he's looking at SPM too. So that's really the ride that I think everyone's looking at because it's probably the best car available now. Because the other car that would be available would be Dale Coyne. A little leeway into talking about them. Connor Daly is probably the highest likely driver for the Coyne car because before the whole Pietro Fittipaldi and Zachary Clayman the Mello thing came together, Connor Daly was probably the favorite for that ride if he got funding. So if he gets some funding for the 500, he's probably the favorite for Coyne and a 4th car for Coyne. Because I believe Pippa Man is pretty much, that's a done deal by now. So Daly or in that car could be Zachary Clayman DeMello if PaySafe can pay up and give him more money for the Indy 500, and PaySafe could have 2 cars. But I don't think Coyne could get 5 cars because right now, as it sits, the Honda engine leases would be at 18. I think that's the maximum. But Chevy would be at 16, which could give them some leeway to run some more cars, which is why we're looking at teams like Harding Racing or Juncos run 2 cars. Connor Daly is also linked to Juncos because he ran there back in Pro Mazda. He was linked to like a half part-time deal full season, but I think a 500 effort for 2 cars, I think that'd be more ideal for him at Juncos. They ran 2 cars last year, so they can do it at the 500. So we'll see about that. I doubt Juncos does 2 cars, but it's a possibility. Harding Racing, with how much money that's been going around on how much money Harding has, if they didn't do a second car, that'd be disappointing. I know we hear all this, we only want to do a second car if it's right, but I mean they could do it. Ryan Reinbold, he confirmed that he has two chassis ready to go for May. Sage Karam is basically confirmed, and I believe J.R. Hildebrand is basically confirmed. But the Ryan Reinbold, they said that they are just waiting to unveil their sponsor. They have a few extra details to go through with the sponsors, and then they'll be announced. So I think last thing would be Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. Bobby Rahal said that they're going to have three cars in May, and the third one is a name that we've heard of before, which is Oriol Servia. Oriol Servia has also been linked to the Schmidt-Peterson ride, but it's more likely that he'll go to Rahal because, he ran with him last year, ran with him in, 2014, and what year was that, 2015. So I guess we'd say that that's a pretty good chance. And Rahal, they're looking pretty good for May, Rahal and Sato and Servia. I think that is a very experienced lineup. And I think Andretti Autosport and Rahal and I would say maybe ECR or Schmidt are probably the teams that we're going to be seeing in May doing pretty well. Anyone else? Jack Hawksworth has been linked to Schmidt-Peterson. There's just a lot of teams that are linked to Schmidt-Peterson. And the Lazier Partners Racing, I heard a couple times. They're in a may or may not show, but it's Lazier Partners Racing. They always seem to show up. So I think that's about it with entries. So right now we're at 33 confirmed and a possible 36. In optimistic fairy tale world, we're at 36. Realistically, but still needs some things to happen. 35 entries and pretty good 34 and guaranteed 33, obviously. So we're in February and we have 33 entries, folks. So that's me clapping. Good job, IndyCar.
Holy shit! What were you talking for?
A
Like
lot of talking.
4 minutes there? My God.
I told you there is a lot of entry-list news.
I'm gonna backtrack you to Schmidt-Peterson because you did mention that they have a lot of possibility entries lined up. You only mentioned 4 or 5 drivers, but there are more with the chance of getting that that extra Schmidt-Peterson car. Who do you think has the best options of getting that car come the race day?
Probably, like I said, probably Jay Howard is the guy that's like a most likely. I've seen him more places being put in that car, like more news sites. It seems like Jay Howard's the guy that keeps coming up most often.
And he did run with him last year as well. So
yeah, he did run with him last year too. Who was Lucas Oil was on that car and One Cure, but One Cure isn't. They're the ones that are going to Rahal, right? I don't know, but anyways. One Cure was with him, and yeah. But the one I think would be the most interesting entry would be Jack Hawksworth in that car. He was linked to possibly having a coin ride. He's shown at Lexus and IMSA that he's really he was good when he was here, but he's actually gotten a little bit better running the Lexus program over there. So seeing him come back would be cool. Plus getting the two British drivers over there at SPM, that'd be kind of neat. Well, even Jay Howard too. I missed that, but still, we have 2 Canadian, 2 British. That'd be cool. But yeah, I would say Jay Howard's probably most likely.
Yeah, he does have the experience, and he has the maturity too. He has, I feel like if you throw a young gun in there, obviously they might have the pace, they may be fast, but he has, at the end of the day, he has that experience, and he's been tried, tested, and proven before. Maybe not so much last year when he ran the wrong line in turn. Well, you know what? We're not going to talk about that, though.
He got taken up by Hunter Ray a little bit. But anyways, and then there's another one I remembered that would, I think, probably be the most interesting and probably the best option. I said Jack Hawksworth, but now I remember this. James Davison doesn't have a ride. And we saw what he could do with Coyne. Minus his incident at the end of the race, that kid can drive at Indy. Like, he drove from the back in a Coyne car. I think I watched this. I paid attention to him in the first 5-10 laps. He was up from last to 22nd. He was doing really well in that race, and I would really like to see him come back this year.
So should we throw him on the Dale Coyne watch list next to Connor Daly? That'd be a good face-off for two drivers competing for a ride. You got Connor Daly and James Davison on the other end. Both of them really fast, really talented, and have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I believe James Davison was even like looked at as a full-time ride, which I've said for a few years. If James Davison got a full-time IndyCar ride, watch out. I've seen that kid wheel some GT3 cars around some street courses and probably will challenge, and he is a fighter. Uh, I think the most notable would be, I believe, 2016 or something like that, where he drove for TRG in the Aston Martin, and that's a heavy beast to be putting around a street course, and he was going, man. That's probably one of the most fun races I've watched, just because James Davison. That kid can drive.
All right, we gotta move on from this IndyCar discussion. Get a chance for myself to speak here.
Which we will talk more about IndyCar in the season preview video at some point, which
Video.
that'll be a
Pretty sure it's
fun
not
little.
video.
Well, we'll find the recording, whatever.
Very cool.
But we'll be doing that. It'll be
About a
cool.
month's time, a little bit less, 3 weeks or so.
And I can talk your ear off some more.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, WEC press conferences. WEC's press conference was just over a week ago, and we got some actually decently surprising, exciting news to come out of that. Just reading off a website here, just let that be advised. But we have 36 full-time entries and 60 cars running at Le Mans with, I was going to say 9 cars on the or 9 confirmed cars on the reserve list, but who was it that just pulled their entry? I just saw it a couple days ago. Somebody pulled their entry, and don't worry, I'm looking it up right now. Okay, but so 36 cars is record breaking for the WEC in terms of full-time entries. You're looking at 17 prototypes and 19 GTE cars. Obviously, the biggest GTE entry is BMW joining GTE Pro with 2 M8 GTEs run by BMW Team MTech. And the team that pulled their reserve entry was IDEX Sport, by the way. And they were on a Ligier. So anyway, that's kind of just a little bit random. So I think we have 8 confirmed reserve entries, but reserve entries never go that deep anyways. So I don't think that is even worth major concern. Anyway, I mean, 30 prototypes and 30 GT cars at Le Mans, so perfect even matchup between the two. LMP1 has, I'm trying to think, it was 10 full-time cars, I believe. Is it? Yep, 10 full-time cars. More news to come out of their event is that Rebellion has, they're using the Orica R13 chassis with a Gibson powered V8, probably based off the P2 car. Which is actually not that bad a decision because Gibson has proved that they can actually make a decently reliable engine. We saw it at Le Mans and we saw it at the Rolex 24. If there were any reliability issues, they weren't really with a Gibson engine, they were with another component of the car. So I think that they've proven that they're reliable. Obviously Rebellion also announced some of their first drivers. They have Andre Lauderer, Neil Yanni, Bruno Senna, Matthias Besch, Gustavo Menezes, Thomas Laurent. They're going to be, next to Toyota, I'd say the biggest entry to look at next year because, well, first off, that driver lineup is really killer. Orica can make a great chassis, and like I just said, Gibson can make a good, reliable engine. Key part being reliable. Not necessarily pointing fingers at Toyota, but I kind of am.
That's mean.
I digress even more. Bicallis Racing is back again next year with their Nismo, the X LMP1 engine, which I actually have noted over the years was pretty good. It wasn't extremely reliable, but it was a very good power plant. And sticking with it, they've done some more development in the offseason, and hopefully they can actually possibly find some pace with that engine next year. They're only confirmed
blow up in like 10 minutes last year.
Yeah, well, no, it had some other issues. But yeah, retired after like 2-3 laps, something like that. Only confirmed driver for by Collis right now is Oliver James Webb, and they'll be using the CLM P101 chassis.
He likes my photos on Instagram. That's a great guy.
This is correct, yes.
Oliver James Webb.
And I think the funny part is he's actually admitted that he has like either a bot or a PR guy who does half the liking of the photos. But
oh, heck yeah.
That's respect, though, if you can admit it.
Those are the best. The
next team, and this is going to be, a little bit of a recollection of my Mobile One Endurance Sim racing days when we had FDAMCR, which was a combination of a bunch of team names. But Manor next year in LMP1 will be known as CEFCTRSM Racing. Can you count? That's 8 different letters before the word racing. And I love how the article just states it's TRSM Racing, also known as Manor. They're confirmed with 2 Ginetta G60 LTP1 cars, which is actually somewhat notable because they only planned on having, not really planned them, but they only had 1 confirmed car before this event, and then they confirmed the second one there. They actually, they're using the Mechachrome engine, which I believe it's a V6. These are the small I believe it's a twin turbo V6 Mechachrome is making based off the. I know it's based off the GP2 car, which actually might make it a V8. But oh man, I
like twin turbo V6.
I love research. Anyway, their drivers right now, we got Charlie Robertson, Oliver Rowland, and that's pretty much it. They're running numbers 5 and 6 next year. Toyota, nothing, no massive news coming out of Toyota. I mean, they got their 2 confirmed entries. They changed their livery.
Besides Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, they changed their livery.
Right?
They got Fernando, which is
no major news, but
great.
They just
we already
an
discussed
F1
that though.
driver.
So I mean, no major news ever since the latest episode. So moving on to Dragon Speed.
Did we talk? Oh, we did talk about that in the last episode, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
We just didn't talk about Fuji. That's right.
Yeah, well, we did, and we had some opinions about it that we're gonna have to discuss later. But Dragon Speed bringing the BR Engineering BR1. They're gonna be powered by a Gibson engine. Their drivers right now, they got Hendrik Hedman, Ben Hanley, and Wayne Taylor Racing star Ranger Van de Zander, who has proven stateside that he's a really good driver. And actually, I just realized right now that he's going to be one of the drivers who's going to get screwed by Fuji. But again, we're going to talk about that later. So, and the last team.
Good job, WEC. Good job.
Last team in LMP1 that was announced was SMP Racing. Moving up from LMP2 ranks last year. They're using 2 BR Engineering BR1s, which are also made by Dallara, by the way. But this car, unlike the Dragon Speed, which is using a Ginetta engine, SMP Racing is going to be using an AER engine, which is what Rebellion used to use in their R1s. LMP2...
You said I talked for a while.
Yeah, I mean, but... Look, I got 4 classes to go over. I can be here all day. LMP2, not as much to talk about. There's a slight downgrade in cars, but the good news is, it will not be a pretty much sole Orica championship, even though there was one Ligier last year running a select amount of races. This year, they have TDS Racing. Dragon Speed is also powering a Gibson-powered Orica in LMP2, which is interesting. We have Labre, like you said, bringing their Ligier with Fernando Rees confirmed, along with 2 other drivers who I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize, but Jackie Chan is bringing 2 more Orcas. They're a team to look out for, a very strong team. And I believe that actually wraps it up with we have Racing Team Netherlands. Not Netherlands. With a
Netherlands.
Dallara. Okay. GT Pro already went over that. Aston has.
I also like Dallaras.
Aston has their new AMG powered, which I still find a little bit odd, but I guess it makes sense because AMG makes a good engine. Look at F1 if you want. AMG powered new Aston Vantage GTEs. So they're going to have two of those on the grid. BMW, we already went over. They have the new M8 GTEs. Ferrari is going to have two cars fielded by AF Corsa full time, and one extra one for Le Mans, which we'll again get into that in a few seconds here. And Porsche is going to be running two cars again. And lastly, Ford will be running their typical two cars again.
But
to round out that.
oh, you're talking about full season. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about full season.
I was about to say, I thought Porsche put in 4 cars. I was like, oh yeah, full season.
Yeah,
The
full
season.
And
I only
last
care
class,
about Le Mans.
last
Personally.
class we have to go over here, because I have done a lot of talking here, is GTE AM. This is just, I love how I ridiculed you for talking for so long, and now I'm talking
Yeah,
for
this is
8
like
minutes
the
or something
IndyCar
straight.
Indy 500 entry list on steroids. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
'Cause you also got to go
Well,
for chassis.
I mean,
and
you got to
engines and
remember that the
driver
Indy
lineups, so it's
500
like
is still a
5
really,
drivers per car.
really long time away. You're going to be talking for like an hour for that one, but GTM, last year there were 6 cars full time. This year there are 9, so it's a little bit of an increase, which is
Wow.
always nice to see. 3 Ferraris running in the GTM. You have Spirit of Race, who was there last year. Clearwater was there last year, but we also have a new team, MR Racing, which will be fielding their entry. Let's see here. We've got Porsche. They have a couple new cars going on here. Project One Racing will be running a new Porsche RSR with that godly exhaust note. So any amount of Porsches you can find on track with that exhaust will be a good thing in this world. Also, Dempsey Proton will be running the same car, a new Porsche RSR. Aston Martin, we have 2 of them. We have the number 90 TF Sport Vantage, which is still going to be last year's Aston Martin. So if you prefer that throaty V8, it is there for you in the GTM class, just not Pro anymore. And Aston Martin Racing will be returning again with a V8 Vantage in the hands of Paul De Lana, Pedro Lamy, and Mateus Lauda. I almost just said Mateus Leist. Anyway, this is what happens when you discuss variety on your
Are you done yet?
Yeah, I am actually done.
Are you good?
If you want to just give
Is that the whole lineup?
a few inputs here before I talk about our extra entries for Le Mans, at least the headlining extra entries.
Well, if anybody else was like me and basically blacked out during some of that and was just sitting there nodding your head, you're like me. Okay, I'm the IndyCar guy. I understand. I'll watch some of it, but if you're like me, you're sitting here nodding your head, going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." So that's why you can hear me in the background saying, "Yeah, yeah," because I know nothing. I care about Le Mans, so get into this, and I can talk after that.
Man says he cares about Le Mans, but hasn't watched it like the past 2 years because he's been out karting.
Well, I'll pay attention to it. I'll pay attention to see if Corvette does well. Because no matter what David Land says, the GT category is going to be the best battle.
Is that what we would call a headway into discussing GTE Pro at Le Mans? Because let me tell you something, sir. Okay, we're going to have 17.
We're all about leeways.
17 cars in the GTE Pro class. I cannot talk tonight, apparently. 17 cars, because we're going to have AF Corsa bringing a third car up. So that's 1 Ferrari that's being added for Le Mans. 2 Porsches being added for Le Mans as well. And we have 2 Fords being added to Le Mans as well. And in terms of other entries, Corvette is bringing their typical 2 cars to Le Mans as well. So that is that's what we're dealing with right there in the GTE Pro class. 17 cars. It's going to be really exciting. The largest class in GTE Pro.
I think it'll be the best class of
in
Le Mans,
years,
honestly.
But
as a Corvette fan, usually when you see Ford like going in with 4 cars, you're like, wow. Everyone else has 2, but you have 4. But now that like Ferrari's adding 3 and Porsche's coming in with 4, you kind of just look at it and you're like, well, we're outnumbered. But Corvette will prevail. I'm telling you that now. There's bias on this podcast towards Corvette, and I'm not going to deny it.
Good job. Anyway, LMP2 will be stepping up from 7 entries to 20 for Le Mans, with all the European Le Mans Series teams coming in.
Elms.
Just an absolute handful of entries. Names like United Autosport. We've got G-Drive. Actually, I want to mention G-Drive quickly because they're not contesting the full WEC season, and it's kind of notable because they're one of the more successful teams, but they're not running the full season this year. They're only running 2 cars at Le Mans, 2 Oricas, by the way, which, same cars from last year. Just looking down a couple more teams here, a couple more notable things. Jackie Chan is running 4 cars at Le Mans, 2 Oricas and 2 Ligiers. The interesting part, though, is that the way the 2 Ligiers are there, they're basically Oak Racing run cars. So all the team members are all Oak Racing. The cars are owned by Oak Racing. The reason why they're under the Jackie Chan name is because Jackie Chan got 4 invites to Le Mans because of their WEC and Asian Le Mans Series efforts. So they basically just said, hey, Oak Racing, you didn't get an invite to Le Mans, but we got 2 extra ones. So you know what? You can run your team, all right? We're just going to put it under our name. You can get your sponsors and everything, bring them all in. It's just going to be under a Jackie Chan name. So technically, you've got the 2 Jota Sport run cars, and you got the 2 Oak Racing run cars, and they're all running under a team name that they're actually not. So that's quite interesting.
Good for them.
Yeah, indeed.
I wonder if they'll bring like the pink cars again, right?
I doubt it. They'll likely be running Jackie Chan style liveries with their own sponsors.
That would be legit.
I would like to see the pink cars though back. Those are pretty nice. But no extra LMP1 cars because it wouldn't make sense because LMP1's only running WEC and it's really, really expensive. And lastly, GTM then, just to end this all off and wake you up from your long 15-minute whatever nap where I've been talking here. Looking down at the entries of extra cars, we got EBI Motors, EBI Motors, whatever you want to say. They're running a Porsche 911 RSR. I don't believe they've said it's a current or last gen yet. I may be wrong, but I'm going to say if it's one or the other, it's probably going to be a last generation one because they're going to be cheaper, and teams like Dempsey and even maybe factory teams, old factory Porsche teams, are going to be looking to get rid of those cars, so that would probably be a cheap pickup. We got we got JMW Motorsport. They're bringing a 488. Keating Motorsports bringing a 488. Proton Competitions bringing an extra Porsche. I mean, so we've got quite a few cars with quite a few familiar names, even in the GTAM class, which is pretty nice. York Bergmeister, Patrick Long. I mean, yeah, that. I think I'm done talking.
GTAM class will always kill me though, because why do you not just put a GT3 class instead of GTEM? I will never know.
Whatever. When they rethink the rules and everything. I mean, they don't have a ton of room. That entry list is filled up, so I guess it's like
GTEM cars.
Yeah,
it's weird.
Whatever, but that's really all I've got to talk about in terms of cars, which leads us to our last thing, I believe, of this podcast.
The meat of the, however you say that, the meat of the potatoes or whatever.
The meat.
That didn't make any sense. The meat of
the sandwich?
Of the sandwich? I don't know. Yeah, the meat of the sandwich.
What else would you put meat in if it's not a sandwich?
I don't know. Well, no, I was thinking like
the meat of the potato
right?
of all things. Of all things.
Hold on, you got like your potatoes and you got like your meat and you got like some vegetables. I was thinking like something like that.
What society do you live in where you eat meat with your potatoes, but it's like
I live in Ohio, dude.
Maybe like mashed potatoes, but like I'm just thinking like a baked
weird
potato.
Things here, man. Okay, we do weird things in those cornfields. Okay, we put meat in potatoes, bro.
Hey, as long as you serve up that corn. You're all good to go.
Yeah, in the corn, we put corn in our potatoes. Fun fact. Do you do that?
No.
Or is that us? Oh,
no, that's just not a thing. Can
Well,
we get
corn
back?
inside potatoes are good. Okay.
Can't. I'll have to try it. But can
You
we
will.
just get off that little quick ramble, which I'm not going to edit out because I've got to prove to people that there is actually
It's
a
just
funny
gold.
side of this podcast. Um, so the last big announcement that came out of that event was Fuji's date change, which is not going over well with 95% of the sports car racing community because it clashes with Petit Le Mans. So that was a very long inhale. So um, that was the longest inhale one could have. Um, pretty much, here's the whole deal. Fuji Speedway is owned by Toyota. Fernando Alonso is running for Toyota.
Coda. Coda the same weekend as it used to be.
Well,
Ran.
yeah, that's the reason why the date change happened in the first place. But Toyota, or Alonso's driving for Toyota. Toyota owns the track. Toyota kind of has a decent say, and also they're the sole manufacturer at LMP1 team right now, so WEC probably doesn't want to piss them off too much. But regardless, is the decision to move the date for a race because of one driver who we can't even guarantee is going to be running the full 2019 segment of the Super season because the F1 calendar's not out yet. Is it fair to all the other drivers who now can't race? I said earlier, Ranger Van de Zander, he won't be able to compete. There's a handful of drivers. All these drivers that are getting affected. I think the smarter thing that could have happened was WEC to either move the weekend up a week or back a week or you know.
Or just
Well, actually, they
left
couldn't
it
move it. They couldn't move it back a week because then it would be clashing with F1 again. Although that would still be
They could have
better
just left
than,
it.
than the situation that it's in. I think, Alonso made the commitment to run in two different series, and he has to deal with this the whole side effects of it. He knew what he was getting into, and he kind of just got a whole break there. And all due respect to Alonso, he's a fantastic driver, but a whole series where you're looking at hundreds of drivers the decisions really shouldn't be revolving around one guy. Absolutely, I think at the fault of the WEC for that decision. Like I said before, a ton of drivers are very, unenthusiastic with this decision, as they rightfully should be, because they have to now make a decision between effectively a WEC championship or racing at Petit Le Mans, which is a big race, first of all, and many of them are already locked into Petit Le Mans because they have contracts with teams. So, I mean, you're pretty much hurting a lot of people's championship hopes here, at least in the Drivers' Championship, and it's
Well, and you're hurting yourself in terms of, how many people you're getting at the Fuji race, because I think Petit kind of came first in contracts, the way it was set up. So, because when they first signed the contract, Petit has stayed the same, but Fuji moved. So I would say Petit probably would be, first. It came first on when it was taking place if anyone's going to drive that race. So I would think more people would go to Petit over Fuji.
Yeah.
Unless, WC's in this with a bigger team in WC or whatever.
I mean, that's the thing. If you want to race Petit Le Mans, or if you have to race Petit Le Mans because you're contracted in already, you're essentially giving up the chance of a WEC Drivers' Championship right then and there because your co-drivers will be out. They'll be racing still. And if they're running a race that you don't run, then they're the ones walking away with the points advantage now because you didn't run a race, so you're not getting points for your portion. So, I mean, they kind of shot themselves in the foot, really. They had a chance to, hurt one driver's chances.
Driver.
They could have hurt one driver's chances. Now you're hurting a handful. So it's just, I hope that the backlash on it, at least, I hope that the backlash sort of teaches them a lesson at what stance they need to take in the future. Anyway, I think that's going to be enough to wrap it up for this episode of Rain Race. We will possibly be back in the middle of the week, the end of the week. I'm not too sure right now. It depends on, of course, planning and everything. We may be back later in this week with a special episode with a special person who I'm not going to say at the moment because, again, it's not set in stone yet. But do look forward to that. Subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're not, you can still go subscribe because I'm trying to build up a fan base there. Anyway, youtube.com/c/deductive or you can check it out on Google Play and iTunes.
There's my shout
Anyway,
out.
yeah. That's going to wrap it up for this one. I appreciate you all tuning in, if you did make it this far, indeed. And, yeah, see you in the next one.